Lawmakers are back in Springfield, infuriating Mayor Lori Lightfoot. All that and more. The focus of our Spotlight Politics. Welcome back to Amanda Vinicky and Heather Sharon. So, Amanda, you reported on this earlier, a little bit of a late news this evening around the elected school board bill. Illinois legislators, have to deal with a couple of big issues. Of course, that is one of them. This bill got major pushback from Mayor Lightfoot, but it passed anyway. So first, Amanda, what does this bill do?
And it really is significant that this is going to the governor, because you've had the state Senate and the state House in recent years pass various versions of an elected school board bill, but never the other chamber. So it didn't quite get to the governor's desk. This is really poised to become law because, as I noted earlier, Governor Pritzker supports it. So while Mayor Lightfoot has been fighting it tooth and nail, she is not going to find an ally on this in the governor's office. And so what it does is really, again, creates this 21-member board. That 21st individual will be a president elected at large across the city of Chicago. Everybody else elected within districts that are yet to be drawn. Half of them the whole elected school board would be in place by January 27, but the first elected members would be joining with half of appointees by the mayor after 2025. So you're going to have people running in the general elections in the years 2024 and 2026. This also creates a advisory board for CPS for non-citizens. And then it also puts a moratorium on any school closures, because that, of course, has been something that folks are really upset happened, particularly under the Emanuel administration. No more of that until 2025, when some of these elected board education members will be seated.
So what are the mayor's concerns? Because she ran on this very issue of being in favor of an elected school board.
Yeah, she did. And that is something that those who are say, hey, wait a second, what changed? What made you reverse course? She says that what it is that this board would be unwieldy because it is just way too big, particularly in contrast to places like New York and LA, where their boards are less than half this size. And then another big criticism is that this doesn't kind of give enough time for a shift of power to take place, particularly because Chicago, well, yes, the only board where there is no elected school board, Chicago is also the only city that is paying for CPS pensions, whereas all other school districts, those pension costs are paid for by the state. And then finally, another real big criticism is that there aren't any sort of campaign finance limitations on these races. And so you're not going to have a fair representation. First, she says that the setup could mean that there are going to be too many parents from majority white areas on the north side if districts are drawn by population, but also what regular parent or resident is going to be able to afford these races. She says that this is really going to be something where it's going to become a power battle of interest groups, particularly one of her big foes, and that's the Chicago Teachers Union. Actually, I'm just going to throw that one back to you. That's something we hear a lot about. Do you see this as a way for the Chicago Teachers Union to gain even more power?
I'm not sure how much more power they will amass, but there is some merit to the concern that this does give CTU the opportunity to get its candidates elected. And we know that CTU has the ability to do that. There is at least one current city alderperson who is a former CTU member and teacher. Same goes for the Cook County Board of Commissioners. And we know that CTU has done a very good job at being organized and mobilizing around their communities, and that they have the ability to sway a political election, basically, by organizing and supporting candidates and endorsing candidates. And we all know the late great Karen Lewis was gearing up to run against Mayor Rahm Emanuel years ago, and once she endorsed Chuy Garcia, he did get into the runoff with Mayor Emanuel at the time. So there's some concern there. At the same time, I wonder if the mayor is for any number of reasons, she disagrees with this bill, and that may just be one of them. But Heather, I want to get you in here. Mayor Lightfoot, she lobbied hard against this. What could the political fallout be?
Well, it is at least the third in this most recent session of a serious defeat that the mayor has suffered in Springfield. The governor signed a bill that changes the way that city firefighter pensions are funded over her objections. And the governor also signed a bill that expands the power of the Chicago Teachers Union, which we were just talking about, to bargain over issues like the length of the school day and class sizes, which they have really been trying to get back for the better part of a decade, if not longer. So today is the culmination of work that really started under Karen Lewis, who of course died just recently, and is really sort of the capstone to her legacy. It is really a huge defeat from the mayor, who said, you know, just on Friday, she told me that this would cause basically, which would threaten the progress that the school district has made in the last several years, and she really tried to pull out all the stops to get it, and she got nowhere. There were 70 votes in favor of this, which is a pretty strong supermajority.
The CTU said as much tonight in a statement that this would be Karen's legacy. This is her legacy. So the Illinois Senate also debated phasing out the use of coal in the state by 2035 in an effort to go green, but negotiations have broken down. Here is what the governor had to say today.
Let me make myself perfectly clear. Our long-term goal is to create meaningful climate change policy that makes Illinois a leader in protecting our people, the environment, and the clean energy industry that we can grow. I will not sign a bill that does not match the gravity of this moment.
So, Amanda, briefly, what is the main sticking point for the opposition? And if a consensus can't be reached, what then?
So there's a whole lot of opposition, and really you have environmentalists that are saying we need to phase out completely coal plants that produce electricity and also natural gas plants that produce electricity. And then you have unions that work at those plants saying, hey, wait a second, there's a whole lot of money and a whole lot of jobs tied up in this. It's most definitely that, but it's also a back and forth. This is become quite the game of finger pointing, and it shows a sort of divide between Governor J.B. Pritzker and the Democratic-controlled Senate led by President John Harmon. So there's some political squabbling that backs this as well, but this really is a significant delay.
Okay, so in city news, there has been a spike in violence over the past week, and Mayor Lightfoot bristled at a reporter's question yesterday about the perception that Chicago is unsafe. Take a look.
But you've got to be concerned about the perception. If people are outside Chicago...
What I'm concerned about, Craig, is the fact that people lost their life this morning. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that there are people who are dead in an act of violence that makes no sense to me. I'm concerned about the families who will be forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones.
So Heather, Mayor here clearly frustrated by the violence. Does she still have confidence in her team and their strategies?
She does. She says that despite the spike in violence this week, which I don't think is a coincidence, occurred just after a huge heat wave. We've often seen violence in the summer track along with the mercury. She said even that the overall trend is heading downward and in the right direction, and she's very proud of that. And she has said over and over again that she has confidence in Superintendent David Brown and that they are trying to address this problem of violence holistically, not just with law enforcement, but also with services and violence interrupters. However, we're not even approaching the 4th of July yet, so there's a lot of summer left to go.
Heather, Mayor Lightfoot also said this is a national issue. What does she mean by that?
Well, her constant refrain when we've had these terrible shootings is to call on the Biden administration and Congress to pass more gun control laws. So while Chicago might have some of the toughest gun control laws on its book, it is powerless really to stop the flow of illegal guns from other states like Indiana, where the laws are much looser. And that's what the mayor wants to see changed, and that's what she's called on the Biden administration to do. However, you and I and everybody else knows that gun control isn't moving anytime through the 50-50 United States Senate. So that seems to be a little bit sort of pie in the sky hopes and not directly sort of drilling down on what's happening on Chicago streets.
So also another issue that the mayor is pushing is to limit alcohol sales by forcing liquor businesses to close at 10. But there's been more pushback. Heather, what's going on there?
Well, originally the mayor wanted that cutoff to happen at 10 p.m. because she said that many of these liquor stores become nuisances where people loiter outside and criminal activity occurs. That brought just howls of protests for people who love their late night tipples. And she compromised, and the measure that will be considered tomorrow morning in committee would cut it off at midnight. But that would still be a significant change because most liquor stores have licenses that allow them to keep selling until 2 a.m. So we'll have to see if that makes it through as part of a 93-page ordinance that tries to help businesses restart and relaunch after the COVID-19 pandemic.
Amanda, is this just another instance where the mayor is bigfooting businesses and aldermen?
You know, I think that this is, as with all else, there's two sides to it. As Heather pointed out, there's frustration that there's loitering, that you're going to have folks that get a little bit rowdy outside of liquor stores or what have you. But certainly this is something that the bar lobby, that restaurant owners, that liquor store owners say, hey, wait a second. When you're talking about violence, this isn't at the root of it. It seems as if she did, at least in this one, take into consideration a lot of that pushback by at least amending the ordinance, getting it to that midnight point. But as Heather indicated, I think that there are folks that are going to say, hey, this isn't enough, particularly when, as ever you say, cross the border. In many places surrounding Chicago, they still have those later night or early morning, if you will, availabilities to get your booze.
And Heather, 30 seconds. This nasty email from the mayor to her staff came to light after a FOIA request. How did the mayor handle her frustration?
Well, she channeled The Shining a little bit while typing over and over and over again that basically she needs a break and that it's not a request and she's going to keep asking. And I think it's indicative of how tense relations have been on the mayor's staff and perhaps a little bit of the trouble she had transitioning from her work as a lawyer to being the top executive in the city of Chicago. The mayor told reporters this week that those problems were all in the past and that they were singing Kumbaya in the fifth floor office of City Hall these days.
Oh, I've got
Yeah.
so many questions about that. All right, my thanks to Amanda Venicky and Heather Sharon for Spotlight Politics.